Hi, Reza. Good later morning for me, early morning to you. It's pretty rare
Thank
somebody's
you.
on the earlier side, because at West Coast, most of the time I'm usually the person earliest in the day. But for the rare occasion that I get to talk to somebody in the future, either from Australia or New Zealand or anywhere down in the Oceania region.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Yeah,
opportunity. Really good to talk with everyone. Yeah, I'm joining you from the future. It is Friday already.
exactly. Is there any sports bets that I should place? Any teams that I should
Yeah,
place a
I
bet
wish
on?
I
Yeah.
knew some of those. That would have been useful.
Yeah, but I'm glad to get you on. I know we've interacted for years through the
Thank you.
Power BI community, MVP community conferences, things like that, and you've certainly have been to a few of them this year. You might break a record, I think, for like the most conferences attended.
Yeah,
But
trying to
people have been, yeah. Go ahead.
make it busy. Yeah, but yeah, might
Exactly.
be. Yeah, I'm traveling a lot actually these days. I think like I calculated it once. I'm like 80% of the time not home, which is not
Yep.
good. It's not dog friendly. Yeah.
Well, and
but
I like
but
we've
good
all
for
been very
everything
happy
else.
to see you. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's been fun to see you moving around and everything. And certainly
Yeah.
just I think in general post COVID, it's been really nice to see a lot of people that you've only seen online for years, and you get to see them in person again. So I
That's
think this
right.
year's been a
Yes.
very healthy growth of in person communities that people have been getting back into.
Correct. Yes. That's right. Yeah. And it's always good to see people, their passion, uh, all of these things about fabric these days, of course. Yeah. That all is very good.
Now, if and you're welcome to plead the fifth and not answer, but I'm curious if you've of all the conferences or events that you've been to so far this year, has there been a favorite or one or two favorites that you've had that you've attended?
Hmm. Which one was a good one? A few actually.
Okay.
Microsoft Build, I liked it because of
Okay.
the type of audience. It's not usually our type of audience because we are like data
True.
analysis and Power BI, Microsoft Fabric. That is more like a developer audience. But I liked the hype around it, which was good. The
Okay.
enthusiasm, yeah, it was really good from that point of view. And saw some friends over there. Uh, what else? Like I always like the internal one we do, MVP Summit, because we get to see a lot of friends over
Yep.
there. But that's not public, unfortunately. Uh, yeah, lots of other events as well. And yeah, unfortunately missed the FabCon this year. So hopefully next year in Vegas we'll do that. But very little conferences around and user groups. I actually find user groups quite more engaging because you are talking about that particular topic in detail. But conferences are good too, right? You get combination of these. In conferences, you get to see um, other topics, discussion about it. But because people usually, especially in big conferences, people are like always moving in hallways uh, between rooms and things like that. That makes it like a super giant event that even if you want to see a friend, it might not happen throughout the conference at all. So yeah, pros and cons. That's right. Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they don't do that anymore. uh, Thank you. Yep, sure. Yeah, I'm Reza Rad, based in New Zealand. Not originally. I'm originally from Iran. Moved to New Zealand 2012. Been an MVP pretty much since then. I think late 2011, something like that. And yeah, collected a bunch of these things, of course. Yeah, my focus area is Microsoft Power BI, Fabric also these days. Back in the days when I started becoming MVP, that was like SQL Server technology those days, a lot of SSIS, data transformation analysis services, things like that. I started my career as a programmer, actually, like C# developer. Worked with databases that time as well, but then very fast actually moved to the database side of things. I really liked the data and analysis, and then gradually moved to the BI.
And hopefully,
Yep, I
fingers
can hear you.
crossed. Yeah, you
Yep,
can hear me because you get my earbud. Now the channel should be able to hear me. Okay. They
right.
weren't. You were still hearing me. They weren't actually getting my audio for just a minute. But
All
we're good
right,
now.
okay. Okay, yeah. So that was pretty much the background, the way I went into the BI, which also kind of relates to the topic that I'm going to present today. This is not a usual topic I do. My topics usually are technical, lots of demos, but this is a specific one about how to move and have a good BI team in your environment, things like that.
Yep. And I know like you were one of the earlier people to make like a kind of pro modeling BI tool for I forget the exact, was it called Power BI Helper? PBI
Power BI
Helper?
helper, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that
like
is the
that
one.
was one of the first things that kind of did any type of documentation or other little analysis. And now we have tons of like enterprise super
That is
fancy ones
right.
for
Yes.
sure. But before there was kind of a market for these, and even before external tools was the thing, you I think just scanned the PBIX file itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was quite a bit of job because you had to like unzip it, go
Yeah,
and find some information. These days much easier because you got PBIP, PBIR, all of those kind of things, which is
exactly.
much better. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it was that and quite a lot of stuff with Power Query. I know that was one of your favorite things to use, or at least you blogged about it quite a lot on various topics related to the Power Query engine as well.
Yes, yeah. Power Query was actually like anything usually to do with the data transformation is usually the area that I love most. I mean, I love everything about the data analytics aspects, but the data transformation is usually like my favorite area. Even back in the days of SQL Server, I was more focused on SSIS side of things than AS and RS. In Power BI, when I started also, it was quite a bit heavy on the Power Query. And yeah, I like that technology. It's super technology. You still need to work your way a little bit, especially if you are working with large amount of data. Power
Yeah.
Query might not be, let's say, performing the best with that. But yeah, there are always challenges and there are always solutions.
I mean, it's end of the day, as long as it's query folded, that's going to solve a large
That is
portion
right.
of your issues. But that's a
Yeah,
whole another topic.
it'll
Yeah.
pass it to the database side. Yeah.
Exactly. But thinking of and at some point I realize we'll need to get the screen share turned on. But considering the topic of the day today and building an analytics team, where do you want to start the conversation for that?
So the analytics team, building the analytics team idea actually came from when I've been for a period of time a BI manager in a company. It was like more than 10 years ago. And then I thought, well, what are the things that we need to have a BI practice? That was a consulting company that they, but then after that, when I was as a consultant and I'm still working as a consultant, I work with a lot of customers, and they either have their own like bigger BI team, smaller BI team, just a single person BI team, things like that. So that came with the good idea around it. So yeah, happy to talk about it and start sharing my screen whenever you want.
Yeah, go ahead and do that, and then once I see that up and running, we'll flip over to that. But
Sure.
I think to your point too, I sessions like this where I actually get a chance to have a bit of conversation, obviously an encouragement to people in the chat. Start questions with a Q if you have any for Reza and I. But it's nice to be able to have some of the soft topics, because there is a lot of value in not only working with the data but understanding how to collaboratively work with teams and everything else.
Sounds good. Okay, so sharing my desktop. Start sharing and let me know when you see my screen.
Yeah, full screen the slide and we should be good.
Okay. Do you see this little window as well, or shall I move it elsewhere?
I'd say, yeah, I see your screen, and let's just get it. If you want to put it in a presentation mode, then that'll be perfect.
Right. Okay. So let's do that. Slideshow from current slide.
There you go.
Okay. There it is. Right. Okay, so just one thing that keep the question coming if they come anytime, and I'll be more than happy to go through that. We've done the introduction, so let's skip that. Okay, now building analytics team involves quite a bit of different things in it. One of the things that I like about it, especially these days, is the technology that supports it really well. And like me being mostly Microsoft person, doing work with Microsoft technologies, these are the three technologies these days that I think really helpful in the whole analytics project. Like if you are doing a data analytics project and if you are using these technologies, Power BI, Microsoft Fabric, of course, it comes also with a little bit of Copilot flavor around it. These are immensely helpful in building a really useful analytics project, and the team can be built using these tools. Not necessarily things that I'm explaining in this are technology related, but use of the technology in this would be helpful, right? This is the most, let's say, technology slide that I have in this in this slide deck.
Yep.
Okay, right. So these are the things that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to look at the building of analytics team from different perspective. The goal of the team, the roles within the team, the people, the roles that we have in the team, which might be different for different organizations, different teams. We'll talk about some of the soft skills, which in my point of view, they are even more important than the technical skills. The team size, how to choose that, the culture in organization, how that can make a difference in your analytics team, some of the standards you need to come up with, the training plans, and all of that, right? Okay, let's start. So the goal. Now, this is the reason that I put it first is I think this is the most important thing first. If we are, let's say, if I'm in an organization, and I want to have a successful analytics team, successful BI team, I shouldn't start with saying, well, let's go and analyze the data because we have so much data, right? That is not necessarily the good reason for it. Let's come with a business meaning for it, right? For example, in retail scenario, this could be things such as, for example, we want to do this analysis project because we want to find out, is it worth to open this new store in this neighborhood or not? Or if we open it, how much profit we would have, things like that. Is it good to have this new product in our line of sales or not? Things like that, things that comes with business meaning. And then when you have that, then you would think, well, can we do that? Can we support that with the data or not, right? So come with that business idea. Not just saying that, well, we got data, let's go and analyze it. Because often what happens is that if we say we've got plenty of data, let's go and analyze it, then we spend so much time on like integrating that data, probably building a huge semantic model, including data for everywhere, but that probably took us like 5 years to build. By the time that we build it, no one in the business is interested in spending money on this analytics project anymore. So coming from that business perspective. Right. So that's one thing. Now into the roles in the team. Now these are the roles that I thought of, and they can be different. Sometimes you might have one person doing a bunch of these together. Sometimes you might have multiple people doing the same role, for example. That all depends on the size of the team, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and also some other aspects around the culture and things like that as well. But let's talk about these roles specifically. Now, I talked about the goal, and that also makes this more related. The most important role, probably I would say, is the project sponsor. This is not a technical role. This is probably even not in the BI team. This is someone who is usually in the board of directors, someone CXO level, like CIO, CFO. It doesn't have to be technical. It can be chief of operation or whatever. But this person usually understands the value of analytics and talk about it with the other members in the board of directors, and talks that, for example, this is what we need to do. Based on this, we would get to that goal of that business oriented goal of analytics team, and would have some usually ongoing conversation with the board of directors, and that would be the person who would basically fund this whole project, because this is something that the company has to invest on. Not every business is gaining income or revenue from analytics project, unless they are, let's say, a consulting practice or something like that. So usually this is considered as an expense from the business point of view, from organization point of view. And the person who would justify that expense, the person who would show the business that this expense has some meaning and useful outcome of it, that is the project sponsor. And usually it's good to also have like a backup sponsor as well, not just one person, because sometimes these are people that they have really few time availability, so good to have like a backup person, just in case that person is not available. You have the backup person to back you up, things like that. The other role is business analyst. This is also not a technical role. This is someone who has been long enough in the business, probably senior in terms of the time that they have been with the business, not necessarily in terms of like their management, senior leadership, something like that. This is a person who understands how the business really works. Like, for example, in that retail scenario, this is a person who would know, for example, we use this system for invoicing. We use this operational system for sales. This is our line of business system. This is how the process is done. Like, for example, when we open a branch, we'll go and do this first. We'll go and do that. We'll use this system. We'll use that system. This is a person who knows day-to-day business, how the business is done, and then knows that what systems are involved in getting the business to work, and that person can then lead the technical team to go and get data from that system, because that is the most reliable, for example, source of customer information. We have customer information in other systems, but probably this is the most reliable one you have to use. Things like that. These are things that would come from deep business understanding. That is the business analyst job. It is usually working a lot with the rest of the team, but it also works a lot with the business stakeholders, getting the requirements, checking the work done by the team, and having a lot of meetings with the users to get their feedback.
So analytics. Question just on the so we have an analyst we have a sponsor and an analyst, and sometimes you come into a project with a sponsor. They're the one who created the project because they already know the buy-in for whatever it is. But I think there's a lot of times I've seen in companies that I go into where there is an analyst that that knows there's a value with something. Like there's something very wrong with the system. It's not broken, but there's a lot of room for improvement on maybe manual things. But they don't have a sponsor yet. There's nobody that actually helps to advocate this upstream, and they're small enough in the company that they don't have enough of their own sponsorship to really sell it upstream. So in the scenarios where there's basically not a project sponsor yet, what little words of wisdom might you recommend to someone to help find that or to self-sponsor themselves, if you'd have any?
Yeah, this is a big challenge actually, because a lot of businesses are like that. You usually get the value understanding from the business analyst point of view or data analyst point of view, but not from the leadership. And sometimes they can start somehow even with that, probably just with a little let's say direction from the business leadership, senior leadership team, saying that, well, let's get on with that. That's not a good idea though, because later in the track someone would stop the project saying that, well, we spent so much time and money on this, what is the value? So I think the best the starting point would be that business analyst or whoever understand the value of this to go and set up meetings with senior leadership team, somehow create a connection with them, somehow go and talk with them, somehow talks about, for example, these things that we have done. If we had this kind of analysis with it, this might have been more useful. Things like that. A lot of discussions. This is not something that would happen like overnight or something like that. This would require quite a lot of different meetings, different talking, different scenario discussions, and things like that, so that they can build that kind of like understanding of what this analytics things is about. Once that understanding is done, then that senior leadership would be more willing to help, and usually you find one person in that team that would be basically covering the role of the sponsor.
Okay. Okay. No, I think, as you mentioned, good words of wisdom for that. I think either through looking for an advocate to help you or to also find the self sponsorship. The one little thing I'll add to that as a takeaway, and I'll give the reins back to you, is as long as you like, I find it sometimes hard, or it's often hard to show monetary value for something, but if you can show anything that saves time, like that's a universal translator. If anything that you have that is a time reducer where you can like point to something and this is 8 hours a week on this is spent, I can get this down to basically automated or down to 2, just showing a reduction in time. I feel is it one of the easiest entries to sell value of something upstream. That's theoretical value.
That is right. Yeah, the time is really good item to point out, and also the money, because I mean the whole business is about money. For example,
True.
what we have done, this was one of Leila's project because it was like a data science project, but we had this kind of situation that the customer wanted to find the optimum point, that if they have this optimum point, their expenditure would be minimum possible. And after Leila did the analysis, found the optimum point, we also added a little bit around it, saying that, well, if you have adjusted this optimum point at the beginning of financial year, you would have saved $500,000 based on your data as of now, because you spent this much, whereas if this was this optimal point, this would have been something like that. So mentioning of the time, of the money, all of these are certainly helpful, definitely useful.
Yep. Perfect. No, thank you for the insights on that.
Welcome. Okay, project manager, like any other project in the business, analytics work is also a project. It usually comes with some deadlines, like when you get this approved budget to go and spend on this analytics work, usually there are deadlines, like we want to get some outcome in a 9-month period, or let's say 5 years period, and this is the amount of budget you have. So you have deadlines, you have milestones. Usually you need to come up with a project plan. You would work with the resources, which would be mostly within your analytics team, resource management. Sometimes they are not available. Sometimes they are busy with some other work. So usually you need someone to take care of all of these plannings. Now, depending on the size of project, this might be different people. Sometimes this might be also the person who leads the team as well. So the team leader becomes also project manager as well, or sometimes this might be one of the people in the team. So depending on that, you might have different people taking this role, but it's good to have that kind of capability. Now, into the technical roles. One of them is the admin technical role, and this would be the person who would basically take care of administration side of things on the databases, BI system. Usually we are dealing with database technologies, so data warehouses. In the world of Power BI, this would be probably some of the settings that we do in a tenant level, in a workspace level. For example, making sure that the workspace setup is right, the security levels are correct. If we have the use of gateway, is this set up correctly? Do the right people have right access to use that gateway? Things like that. Where are our backups stored? Are we using a good versioning system? It might be GitHub or Azure DevOps, or it might be just like a backup of these in OneDrive for Business, and any sort of those information, using some of the reports that you can monitor what is going on, things like that. These are usually the administrator type of role. But again, depending on the size of team, this might be a separate role for itself, or it might be one of the developers that eventually had become also like an administrator. That happens a lot, and because you may not have that much admin task ongoing. Right, so continuing on the technical role, one of the roles is the ETL developer. ETL stands for extract, transform, load. This is the person who would work a lot with the data, so would connect to those data sources that business analysts came up with, saying that, for example, this is the source for sales system, this is the source for this is the source for that. So ETL developer actually goes and create connection to those. It will bring the data from those into either a staging database or bring it transformed into like a data warehouse. This person needs to understand some of the ETL terminologies, the ETL things such as slowly changing dimension, inferred dimension member, light arriving fact tables, all of those kind of interesting things that happens behind the scene, and also needs to know how to deal with data quality issues, for example, filter unwanted records, things like that. So this is a person also need to work a lot with SQL statements as well, because one of the most common data sources available is always a database system. So that's the ETL developer job. Database developer. Now, this role can be also combined with ETL developer a lot of times, depending on the size of the team as well. This is the person who would actually work with the database itself. So this is the person who would write stored procedures, SQL scripts, and building that in a way that would cover those situations of slowly changing dimension, data warehousing situation. If, for example, there's a performance things that needs to be covered, this is the person who would do that. In most of the teams I've seen, usually these two, the database developer and the ETL developer, they are usually same kind of person job. You might have multiple people doing this, like they all do database and ETL together. But sometimes you also see separation. Sometimes you see some person just do the integration. They just bring the data into a staging environment, and with some, let's say, data quality checks and bringing only the right data, and then a database developer on top of it, doing some enhancement on top of that data. Data engineer is another role that is also kind of related with the rest of these three altogether: the ETL developer, the database developer, and data engineer. Data engineer usually is having a little bit more knowledge about working with a larger amount of data, with technologies such as Spark, parallel processing engine behind the scene. This is the person who might work with notebook a lot, like Jupyter Notebook, or in Fabric, the Fabric Notebook, using those languages supported in the notebook, which are at the moment 4 languages, and can configure the Spark node configuration, or what we call as a Spark pool, make sure that the process is done in the right way. And also, not only that, it is using the enough, let's say, resources from that Spark compute behind the scene to accomplish that job that needs to be done. It might be data preparation, or it might be something to do with even data science project or machine learning project. Usually this person works with files a lot, but also works with objects in Fabric environment, for example, such as lake houses.
So I am curious about the lake house one, because I feel like that lake house is, because I've not really built them previously in Azure that much. I've been more of a Power BI developer, but Power BI developers are now becoming more back-end developers because of the ability of Fabric. It's making things easier, right? But I feel like the lake house is on that, is like riding the fence. Like a data warehouse is definitely more of the engineer and like the back-end kind of people, the DBAs that build that stuff. But that lake house, which in some ways to certain people is like a glorified semantic model with extra bells and whistles and the one lake and all that, but it's so easy to spin up and use as like a central direct lake model repository that I feel like even analysts to a degree who are the developers of semantic models, it's a pretty easy stepping stone for them to make a lakehouse too. It might not be very fancy, but a basic lakehouse. So I almost see the role as being historically data engineers, but like going forward, the people with a lot less skill than an engineer are kind of also in some companies taking over that responsibility as well when they don't have that many dedicated roles. They're wearing the multiple hats.
That is correct. Yeah, especially because like the way that these new technologies are making it so simpler. Like, for example, when you go and build a lake house, Fabric just builds it for you behind the scene. It associates it with that Spark pool created in the workspace, and all of that complexity is abstract from your point of view. So you may not even know how the things is done, but it is built for you and you can use it, not even having that, let's say, deep knowledge of Spark settings.
Exactly.
Cool. So continuing with that, data scientist is another role. Now, usually data engineers and data scientists works very closely to each other. However, the big difference here is that these are people who would know the full process of data science or machine learning. Usually it's a big process involved in something like doing a data science project. Usually you come up with a problem definition. After problem definition, you'll go and see if you have enough data to support that problem, some kind of like data discovery, data preparation. Then once you have your data, you know that this is the data that you can use for that machine learning project. You'll go and choose a machine learning algorithm, set some parameters for it, pass part of your data, we call it train set, into that, keep part of data, we call it test set. You'll train your model using train set, and then you'll come up with an output. You compare that output with the test set. You evaluate the result. It may be close to what you expect. It may not be. So you run that algorithm. You run that process again with a different algorithm, with a different set of parameters. You come up with another result, compare it with a test, and then this goes on and on. You do that cycle for a lot of time until you get to a close to a desired output. Once you find that model that is good model to use, then you operationalize it within a process. It might be the process of ETL. You have this last step added on top of it, which would run this model and get some prediction output, things like that, depending on what you want, and then feed it back to a data warehouse or a lake house or something like that. This whole project, this whole process is a big process. It's not only knowing the process, it is also knowing about what each machine learning algorithm does, what are the libraries that support that. Like, for example, in Spark or Python, we have libraries such as Spark ML, LightGBM. These are like big libraries. Each of them has their own set of algorithms to use, in addition to knowing how those algorithms are working and how to set up the parameters for those. So this is usually a huge job itself. Like, I wouldn't consider myself as a data scientist, right? In our team, Leila was the data scientist. And usually you need a person dedicated for this kind of thing. It is a role that can be picked up by other members, like your data analyst might gradually move to become data scientist, but needs to go through a big learning curve. It also depends on how much of that do you really need in your project, because sometimes we may not really do any predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics. We might just want to do descriptive analytics, which is analyzing what the data we have already already right now, which tools such as Power BI can do that for you without doing a data science project. So this is the part that if you need it, then usually you need a role like this.
Exactly. And it's I think there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of clients that think they want machine learning and data science, and but it's running a marathon while some of them are still learning to crawl to a degree. If you're going like the
That is
crawl,
right.
walk, 5K, because it like you do need with most data science models, like I feel like a reasonably large amount of data to be able to accurately predict patterns. It's like any sample size.
That
The
is
sample
right.
size needs to be big enough for that, but it also needs to be good quality data. And there are more and more companies these days with large amounts of data. Like data is just increasing in size typically, but the problem continues to persist on the quality of the data itself to analyze, because it's garbage in, garbage out. So I've
That is correct.
it's a great place for people to get to, but most of the time that I ever get a client coming to me eventually wanting to hit this is like, all right, we got a few milestones to hit first with the data quality before we get there. But once we get to that, then we can start spending the lot of money training these things, because the person who can train a model still costs a bit of money, and you usually don't want to have to pay them to train off of bad data.
That is right. Yeah. Yeah. The quality of data, getting the backbone right before doing this is one of the most important things that needs to be done, of course. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Okay, now coming on to some like Power BI roles side of things. So one would be the data modeler. This is the person, I call it data modeler. You might call it anything else, Power BI developer or something. This is the person who would deal with the semantic model itself, like tables, the relationships, making sure that you got the star schema, the direction of the relationships are correct, because the relationships here are not exactly like the relationships back in the database. In database, we have the relationship between two tables, but then there is no concept of direction of relationships. So in Power BI, we have things done slightly different. Also, the calculations that you add on top of your model, things that you build using DAX as a calculation language and create measures, how are measures evaluated on the fly, what are different ways of writing those measures using DAX. This is the person who usually needs to have a good understanding of DAX, and DAX is usually a part that takes longer time than anything else to learn. I know a lot of Power BI developers that they are still learning DAX. I'm still learning DAX myself, like whenever I'm doing something. So this is the part that you need to be familiar with how the semantic model engine also works behind the scene. Some understanding of VertiPack engine, things like that would help, but mostly your data modeling skills, mostly your DAX skills and things like that would be helpful in this side. Data analyst is more like a front-end role. This is the person who would do the visualization. This is the person who would also need to have a good understanding of how best is to put different visuals together. Like, for example, this visual is good for conveying this message, whereas the other visual type is good for conveying another message. And what are the color combinations we use for this? Sometimes you have company colors that you have to use those anyway, but sometimes you don't have that and you want to come up with a good combination of colors and use that in things such as conditional formatting, things like these that would pass the right message to your users. Building effective visualization is, from my point of view, is one of the most important thing in the BI system, because this is what your users would see. No matter how much time you spend on your ETL project, how much time you spend on your star schema, this is the DAX expression that you spend like 5 days writing that little DAX formula. None of those would matter if you don't have a good visualization to support that and pass that to the message, pass that message to the users. This is like your front end. This is what your users would see. So spend time on it. Don't make it like last 5-minute job of the BI project. Do it properly. architect. Now, because we have a lot of things involved in a BI project, like you might have an ETL process done using data factory, data pipelines, data flows. You might have your data warehouse. Where is your warehouse? Where is your lake house sitting compared to the warehouse? Do you use both? Do you use one of them as a staging? Then the data comes and transforms into a warehouse. How the Power BI sits on top of it. Is it using a direct lake connection, or is it using import data because of some limitations that you might have faced in direct lake? Then Power BI reports live connection to that. How the workspace setup is, what licensing configuration do you use? There are lots of things, lots of details in the way that these separate components work together, and that is the job of an architect, to come up with a plan and say, for example, this works with this works with that. This is my, let's say, dev environment. This is my production environment. This is our deployment plan. So all different aspects of the whole project. This might be an outside job, or it might be an internal team job. Sometimes when you don't have that capability internally in the team, this might be a consultant that would come and design the original version of architecture, and then you use that as a golden architecture and build on top of it. Or sometimes if you have a really big BI team, this might be a role for itself. Usually this role doesn't need a very deep understanding of each side of the technology, but needs to know about all different parts of the technology enough to make sure how they connect to each other. Now, this role, the programmer or application developer role, this is not really a this is not a required role in a BI team, but I often found it useful. And sometimes this is not even a full-time role. Sometimes it is like you have a programmer somewhere else in your business and you get their help in a specific requirement. Like, for example, you built this Power BI report, and now you want to embed that in a custom ASP.NET application that you have, and a web developer can help you with that. Or as an ETL developer, I want to connect to these few source systems. One of them requires a special way of connecting. I need to pass some security token using a programming language, things like that. So a programmer can help with that. So usually having that kind of skill set, even if it is not in the team, having someone in the organization with that skill set for situations that you might need that would be helpful. Like any other things that you do, the work that is done by the team is good to be tested. Sometimes this is what the business analysts do because they are familiar with the whole process. But sometimes this might be like a role by itself. This is a person who would go through everything, basically, like looking at this report, looking at if the buttons are going where they should go, are the bookmarks are all set up correctly, are the numbers correct as well, because that is the most important thing. You need to reconcile it with the source system. Is it the right number? If it is not, why it is not like that? Tester would spend a lot of time making sure that the quality is right, and would work with the developers to give them feedback, and also to business analysts. Because of the relationship between developer and business analyst, that is why I said that usually this person is mostly on the business analyst side. Sometimes you also get the end users to help with that. Like the end user come with this requirement that I want this report, this. And then you would also get them and get their feedback as a test on your report, like go and check it out and see how this is working. But usually when you do that, you also need to do some testing yourself, because they might test, for example, some particular numbers and things like that. They might not go and test every single functionality, like what happens if I go and click on this button that's do this bookmark and things like that. So those kind of things might be something you need to test yourself in that situation. Deployment person or deployment manager. Now, this role can be sometimes also the role of the admin, or combined with the role of architect. This is the person who would manage the different environments, dev environment, production environment, sometimes test environment, would control what goes in each environment, how the users see the changes, what is the process of accepting the change, who is approving those changes once the changes are approved, what is the deployment pipeline that would pass it there. It might be a deployment pipeline in Power BI or Fabric, or it might be just a bunch of PowerShell scripts that does that deployment for you, making sure that after that deployment, if something goes wrong, there is a way to roll back. It's a big job itself. Usually that is one of the reasons that I say it might be related to the admin, because you'll need to have access to workspaces and a lot of other things around it too. And of course, because it's a team, you need someone to manage the team, to lead that team. This is a team leader position, which sometimes can be a technical person, but doesn't necessarily need to be a technical person. This is a person who would have some people management skills, making sure that the morale of the team is good, they have team functions, they go out together. If someone is sick today, that is fine, we can cover it by someone else's thing, someone else's, let's say, availability, making sure that the team are communicative enough so that in case one of them is not available, the others can pick it from there and do the thing themselves, work a lot with the project manager, work a lot with the architect to make sure that everything follows the right path and we are on track on doing things and all the things that a team needs to be managed. This is a person who needs to be usually approved by every team member, because you don't want to be managed by someone who like you don't consider that person as a manager yourself, right? So this is a important role to make sure that the whole thing goes successfully. And in terms of the roles outside of the team, this is also one of the roles outside of the team. Sometimes, and depending on the project, depending on what particular problem you have faced or challenge, you might need to get help from outside consultants. This might not be like a full-time thing. It might be on demand. It might be, for example, you have this performance issue in this particular report, in this visual, you'll get a couple of hours help, or sometimes a couple of days, sometimes a couple of months. It all depends. From someone, they come and help you with the performance tuning, sometimes with the peer review, making sure that what you have done is correct, making sure that best practices are done, things like that. These are people with deep understanding of that particular side of technology, and also they've worked probably with industries similar to your industry or other similar industries, and they bring their expertise to make sure that the project goes to the right path. This is also another role that is outside of the BI team or analytics team, but can help. Now, this really depends on the culture of organization. Some organizations don't have this culture, but some do. In some organization, you have this, we call it like super users or self-service users or data analysts, business analysts, that they are on like different teams, like one in HR team, one in sales team, a couple of them in marketing team. These are people who are understanding the business, of course, but they are also having some passion about data, working with data. Like they probably already use Power BI desktop to connect to their own data sets and data sources like Excel files, things like that, come up with some new reports. And that is a great thing. You can actually use that to help the entire BI team. You can provide a semantic model, a data set for them to go and use that as their golden source of truth. And then if they want to combine other things with it, they build like their own chain data set, things like that. But having them there would help the BI team, because it would reduce the amount of pressure, requirement, all of those that comes into the BI team. Now you have parts of your team in other parts of the organization. The only thing is that this has to be governed correctly. You have to make sure that they follow the right procedure. Like, for example, if they want this particular information, this is already available in your golden model. So you might come with some like data catalog saying that these are things that we have available. If there is something you don't have it available, go and build it. Kind of create some kind of like Teams channel for everyone to be in touch with each other. Like, I've created this, you can go and use it. Things like that. Come up with some governance, come up with some training plan for them so that they get up to a speed of how to use these tools properly. And when you do that, then you would have a good flow in your whole BI project. They would help the BI team, even not being the BI in the BI team. They would help the project to succeed.
Well, and the thing that I like with a lot of these individuals is it really like puts I guess pressure, but motivation to make sure you get those promoted and certified data sets. And we now have that new label. What is it? Master data that's in the
Yes,
service
yeah.
now. Yeah, we
Yeah,
have because like yep, exactly, and like well, especially with now that we have warehouses and lake houses, like it makes sense to have that additional labeling. But these are the people who are going to go want to poke around in that stuff. So making sure that there's good data available for them, so we don't end up in those meetings where 5 people have 5 different numbers for the same value, is very important for having those core semantic models and sources of truth.
Yeah, that's right. And they also need to understand some of the background information of how things works. Like, if as a business analyst or as a self-service users, I create a change semantic model from an existing semantic model, I need to understand that whenever I refresh this would also probably refresh some information over there. And would cause some load on top of that. So they need to understand all of these so that they are aware of any performance implication that their work might be causing.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so that was the team. Now, in terms of other aspects around the team, one of them is the culture, which is actually related to like the slide before. Like, for example, in that previous slide, I talked about like self-service users. Some organizations have that, some organizations don't have that. That is the culture in the organization. In your organization, you might not, let's say, encourage, or let's say the organization might not encourage that. They might say, well, everyone is end user, so the BI team has to go and build that. Or in some organization, they might even say, well, we don't even want to have an internal BI team. We want to have everything outside vendor, but a couple of people in the team, in the organization here to be working with them, right? So this is mostly like outsourced then. But choosing the right vendor would become more important in that situation, whereas when things done internally, you build a BI team. So that whole culture is important. What is the culture in your organization, and how you can adjust everything related to that. The size of team is also dependent on the culture, but it also dependent on a lot of things. It dependent on the culture. Basically, for example, that self-service user was a good example again for that. If you have a lot of self-service users in different sides of businesses, then you may not need a lot of data visualizers or data analysts in the BI team themselves. You may need few, but not a lot, because there are like self-service users all around doing things. You may need to have more strong data modeling capabilities in the BI team to build a semantic model that they can use. Things like that. Sometimes you have like a deadline that you have to meet, and that deadline is coming in 6 months. So you may need to have a bigger team to cover that. Sometimes you have a longer deadline, so the team size can be smaller, but work throughout a period of time. So the budget is also important, the milestones, the deadlines, the skill set of the team, the workload. What are the things that they are working at the moment? Because not everyone starts with being a full-time BI team person. They might be a business analyst at first, so they are already doing some other things, and then gradually get into the BI team. So you might have like their availability partially at the start. So all of those would determine what big team you might need. Sometimes the BI team can be 2 people, 1 people. Sometimes it can be like, I've seen BI teams like with over 60 people in the team.
And bigger, yeah.
Yeah. The standards are also important. Now, because it's a team, it's good to have some kind of standards. Like when we build reports, this is the template we are going to use. This is the theme file that we have, which has all the company colors, the fonts, things like that, and it is shared over there. Let's go and use it. Who is taking care of that? If we are going to put some naming for our objects, which we always do, then what is the naming convention? Is everyone using their own naming convention? Not a good idea. Probably better to have like a standard for the whole team to use, especially because some of the objects have different let's say setup. Like for example, your lake house can have spaces in it, but for example, I don't remember, data pipeline I think doesn't support a space in the name, things like that, right? If the self-service is used, how is it used? Like for example, the workspace that has the semantic model, this has provided the view and build access for the self-service users, but then self-service users has their own workspace to publish their content into there, and you consider that as like your medallion architecture, that is like your silver, bronze level, this is like your gold level. All of these has to come up with some good set of standards and templates. And one of the people who actually deal with this a lot is that architect role. Again, this is the person who would go through these, build up some of these, but also other people in the team would have inputs in all of these. You'll need to have a lot of meetings with the team. You need to put these guidelines and standards somewhere that everyone knows where they are, like in a wiki page, in a SharePoint page, in a SharePoint website or whatever, and they need to be maintained. Document that you have used like 5 years ago but haven't got updated now probably is not going to be as useful as it was at that time. So it's a process to get these done, but this is an important process because it would ensure that the quality of the work done by the team is always the same quality and hopefully high quality. Yep. Training is another important aspect. These roles that we are talking about, they have different requirements. They have different skill set requirement, and sometimes also some soft skills requirement. So you need to make sure that they have enough training to cover the tools or the skills they need to do their job. Like as a business analyst, this person needs to know about visualization, things like that. As a data modeler, this is a person who needs to know how to write DAX expression. As self-service users, they need to know how to create live connection to your semantic model, and sometimes even build some change semantic model on top of it, some basic understanding of doing data transformation, things like that. So each of these would have their own training agenda. Coming up with a training plan for them would help to make this process more like a standard, because different set of users would have different set of training requirement. Even your end users would require some kind of training, but their training would be like a simple training saying that how to navigate in the Power BI report, things like that, how to drill down, drill up. Whereas your central model developers might have a totally different training agenda, like deep dive on vertipack analysis engine or DAX or things like that. And finding the right training provider would be another important thing in here, because sometimes you may want the BI team to deliver that training, but because this is not usually their main job, this is not what they do like every day, getting an external provider to do that training might be a better option, especially because they have usually this like training agenda. Like if you look at Reed's website, our website, or any other consulting websites, we usually have like different agenda for different persona of the people using. Even if you want to deliver that internally, you can actually use that as kind of a understanding of what needs to be used for training different roles. And this is important because sometimes you get people moving in these roles. Sometimes you have a self-service user who like to become more involved in the BI project. They might like to become a model developer at some point. So they would need some understanding, some training on the model development to gradually become a model developer. The role of AI agent, right? This is the scary part for a lot of people because, like with all of that Chat GPT, Copilot, things like that, everyone think that well they are here to threaten our our existence, and is our role going to be removed? That is not the way that I think, and would be good to know your opinion on that later, Reed, too. My thinking is like I always use this as an analogy. Like when the computer came, like a lot of people thought that then like people wouldn't really have job because computers are doing the things. But still, at this age, we are using computers and we have people driving those computers, right? Copilot is the same thing, right? Or Chat GPT. They are here to help. They make us more productive. Like if I want to write an email, things like that, they can help me to write it faster. If I want to write a DAX expression, they help me to write it faster, things like that. I can compare this DAX expression with another DAX expression. I can be more productive. If I spend, for example, previously 8 hours to do something, I might spend like 2 hours to do it now. But still, I need to spend that time. And when I become more productive, I generate more outcome. As a result, business proceed faster. And as a result, when business proceed faster, I would have more tasks generated for me to do, right? So it would be a cycle that everyone would get benefit out of it. It is a different way of working in this new generation, but still there would be a lot of work to do. What is your feeling on that, Dream?
I mean, I do think that the hype train has quieted down a little bit on a lot of the integrations with these things, and a bit of definitely overpromise from OpenAI on some of the deliverables that they keep wanting to bring out. But I think this is something that will continue to need more use. I don't think it's quite there of the like, oh, it's going to replace our jobs, or like all that kind of scare of like, oh no, my job's going to go in a few years. Like some basic stuff like maybe underwriting or just word editing. Sure, like it's a really good office assistant for stuff. It helps me to debug code a little bit. It's good for writing. I also don't really like the term prompt engineering. I've been told by enough people you're not actually engineering anything. It's a prompt. It's a prompt curator. You're curating a question because the better the question asked, the better the answer you get. Right? It's a matter of being detailed. So I think these roles will have more and more importance. But I think most of the people who will probably be doing this, it's going to be the tiny hat on top of the larger hat of your data engineer. Your data engineer will be anybody who's doing ML learning or data science or engineering will likely be this same person doing that. So like more companies have engineers than scientists. Very select few companies have a data scientist, but the science part and this is going to get more and more tightly integrated because this is just going to, I think, assist more on that type of stuff. But I don't really imagine, at least in the near future, there's going to be primary roles for this. I think everybody's just going to learn how to use the tools because it's going to be built into Outlook to help you edit an email. It's built into Power BI desktop, all those things. So it's going to just be an extra office tool you'll have as part of your job, but it won't be your job specifically.
Yeah, that is right. And one thing I always say is that it is the reason it is called Copilot, not the pilot. So you are still the pilot, right? This is just there to help you.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So just a few more slides, and then we should be good. Timing wise, we are fine, Reed?
Yeah. We have a soft stop, so feel free to wrap up as you need to.
Okay, so only a few slides here. So soft skills. So no matter which role you have in your BI team, everyone in the BI team would still get benefit from these skills. These are not technical skills. These are skills that, however, are essential for people to have. The ability to communicate. We want people to be communicative. Like if I made this change and I kind of think that this change might affect other people in the team, I need to be communicative about that. If I face a obstacle in my job and in my task, and I think this would introduce a risk in the project, in the timelines and everything like that, I need to be communicative about that. And this communication sometimes is with other people in the team, sometimes it is with the business users as well. You need to be able to talk with everyone and communicate that. This communication can be email, can be just talking. I like this slide actually. I kind of like copied it from one of the tech eds, like previously Ignite was called tech eds, that has been presented in New Zealand like many years ago. There was a person talking about this, that this is a really good ability to have for technical people to to turn the dial, sometimes to talk technical with the technical people, like we all do that because we are technical. But then you need to be also able to turn the dial to the business side when you are talking with a business person, because they don't understand the technical side of things, right? We are talking about, well, this filter function that I have applied within my DAX expression, this is all selected, it doesn't work the way that I expected. They don't understand that, right? You have to give them the business understanding of it. So turn the dial, talk with the business, but then when you go and talk with your other team members technically, then turn the dial on the technical side. Having the can-do attitude, really important. When we are doing our job in a BI team, ideal world, we want to do the job that we are supposed to do. Like I'm a data analyst, so I'm supposed to work with Power BI, do data analysis with Power BI, but someone come and tell me that we want this report to be embedded in a custom application. I can usually take two different attitudes. One would be, well, that is not my job, I don't know how to do it, go and find someone to do that. Another attitude can be, well, it's not my job, but I can help you to do that. Then I go and talk with a programmer and we sit together, we come up with a plan how this is done. Even if I'm not the person doing it, having this attitude that we can do it, that would be helpful for the entire team. We want the whole project to succeed, of course. And ability to presentation. No matter what your role is in the BI team, if you are the most technical person in the BI team, still you need to know how to present. You are not probably going to present in a conference room with 600 people in it, but you are going to present this job that you have done, this report you have built, these calculations you have used, the logic of that to your business users. Sometimes it is just behind the disk showing them what you have done. Sometimes it is in a boardroom meeting, sometimes a larger user group, but it is important to have that ability. This helps you regardless of your role in the organization, even not in the BI team. These soft skills that I'm talking about, they are in any jobs. You need them, and having them would definitely help. And there are tons of books and learning materials about each of these subjects. Right, that was pretty much all of my slides to talk about.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and get that switched back here then. There we are.
Do I stop my sharing?
When I reset.
Oh, right.
Small thing. When I reset this, I forgot to put your name in there, but I can really quickly type in. There we are.
Cool. So if there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, if there's any general questions, there's been a lot of nods and agreements, and I think additional comments related to everything that you've been talking about in the chat between everybody in there. Nothing question specific that I saw, but there is anybody with an additional one, please feel free to bring those. Oh, here we go. I did get one from Van Lessing, so I'll bring that up here. I often wonder what self-service people do with the Analyze in Excel interface. There's no usage metrics as there are for reports. Or the question is, are there usage metrics for
the usage metrics for analyzing Excel? I don't think the default usage metrics would give you that.
Correct on that, yes. The first thought that came to mind, because I just did a stream on this with Sandeep, who talked about semantic link. So the semantic link does give you statistics on the. You don't get user statistics, I don't think, but you do get statistics on the consumption of the model that you can collect queries. Query statistics, the column heats, and all that other stuff. So Analyze in Excel users will still at least contribute to that data. You can't see don't quote me. I don't know if you can see that there were 35 users who used Analyze in Excel to access it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But
one of the other things is to use DMVs, like those dynamic management views. They give you
Yeah.
also some kind of information, not per user thing, or it might be per user as well, because you get the user information, but you also get the queries running on this model, things like that. You need to filter it. So things like that can be helpful. Yeah, definitely not the default usage metrics thing.
I'm curious.
There
Here,
is also a Power BI audit log, I think, for analyzing Excel. You might get some information from that. So combination of that and these DMVs, yeah, something like that would probably give you.
I'm laughing because I was Googling this actually just because I'm curious. The only way to look at a report in Excel that's connected to a Power BI model is you have to authenticate with the user login, like because it's secured data,
Yes,
right? Your
correct.
user that you're authenticating with has to have permission to the app, the data set of the workspace. So I am 50-50 wondering, like, would that actually be in the usage metrics report? Because it should still maybe show a log of a user looking at that. But the funny thing is, it's not mentioned in the monitoring whether or not it is in there, but you can analyze in Excel the usage metric report. There is an actual option to connect an Excel pivot table to the usage metric model that's directly mentioned in the documentation. So you could at least look at the data of usage that may or may not include analyze in Excel using analyze in Excel.
Especially because we have the audit log entry for that as well, analyze in Excel. Yeah.
I would hope it would, because it's another user logging in. It just happens to be they're looking at the same model via the Excel tool rather than the
correct. Yes.
But yeah, to your point, there's some things with the API, and also I think some semantic link can give in more information on it. But it should be one of those things that I think in general would be nice to get collected in the future if it's not today by that one.
Correct. Yes.
All right, let's see if there's any others. I'm quickly scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, everything else I think was just chat. But at least comments from my end, I've enjoyed soft skills conversations like this, especially just around the team, because there's a lot of roles mentioned that I think people may or may not have had transparency into and understanding, like what roles could potentially exist. But there's a lot of, I would say, Venn diagram overlap between these roles. Like they're in a very big company, enterprise level with hundreds, if not thousands of employees. A lot of these roles are clearly defined, like person by person.
That is right.
You get to a smaller company, one person's dude. Yeah, exactly. It's the person with many hats, the one person show for that. So the smaller you get, the more those bubbles kind of start to overlap with each other before you eventually end up with the one person show where you do everything.
Yeah. Team.
Exactly. I am my own champion, advocate, manager, employee. Yeah. I give myself my own performance evaluations, all that stuff. Any for resources for some of this stuff, out of curiosity, where would you recommend people go to maybe look into some of this stuff if they want to read a book, a blog, watch a video, anything to help them learn more?
Well, I would encourage looking at, I think there are some parts in Microsoft Learn documentation about Center of Excellence setups and things like that. So I would encourage looking at that, because that would also give you an idea like how the BI project, like let's say, stages are and how they can be connected together. That is one thing. But in addition to that, there are perhaps some resources on like building BI team. I've used a lot of articles, which I can't really pinpoint any of those at the moment. But yeah, general building BI team would be helpful. I have some, not articles, but I have a couple of videos in my YouTube channel as well that might also help. Yeah, apart from those, I don't have anything else in the back of my mind.
Okay. And then I'll, when I'm finished up with this, I'll drop a couple of additional links then in the description and update that for the YouTube description. But I think no new questions that I can see here. So I just want to, again, appreciate and thank you for coming on to this. It was definitely a long time coming. And but like with most of my presenters, I always welcome an opportunity to get you back on, get you a chance to talk about this in the future. I have a lot of fun doing these hangouts. So it's nice to be able to have a discussion around these topics, because I think most of the audience here finds these soft skills discussions especially quite valuable.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to be with you here again, Reed, after a while. And yeah, great job you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And enjoy the rest of your Friday morning as well.
Thank you.
All right,
have
and
a good
curiously,
Thursday.
yeah, well, I won't be at Fabcom Europe, but will you be at either Ignite or Pass?
Yeah, I think Pass. I'll definitely be in Pass. I might
Okay.
also do Ignite. Yeah, I'm not in Fabcon Europe as well, but I'll see you in.
Oh yeah, because
either
I keep thinking
Seattle or
Ignite is going to be in Seattle. It's in Florida this year, right?
Chicago.
Or Chicago. Okay, Chicago.
Which
Like normally
is weird,
they're next to
because
each other.
November,
But
who
yeah,
goes to Chicago in November?
it's cold. It's cold. But yeah, I'll see you at Pass then. So perfect.
Yeah, I'll see you then.
Have a good rest of your morning. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.